A very good afternoon and a very warm welcome. I'm Michelle McCollum, Chair of Brampton Board of Trade and AVP at Sheridan. I'm delighted to introduce today's event, part of the View from the Top series, where we meet top business leaders in Brampton to gain insights into their business and learn about their leadership journeys. Today's conversation is sure to be an inspiring one, where we'll be learning more about two of Brampton's most prominent business leaders, Bob Peacock and Joe Jackman from Almag Aluminum. I'm trying not to say aluminium. They will be sharing their amazing stories, thoughts and insights, and then we'll have a Q&A facilitated by our own CEO, Todd. A huge thank you to today's sponsors, CN, Deloitte, Sheridan, Rogers, Goodison Insurance and Meridian. We are most grateful to all of you for your ongoing support, which is so important for our organisation and for the business community here in Brampton. So as you know, Brampton Board of Trade is a hugely valuable resource. We play a pivotal role in bringing together businesses and organisations to grow our local economy. We provide a unique opportunity for networking and for leaders and entrepreneurs to make connections in a professional and highly supportive environment. We also provide a platform for advocacy and to ensure that the voice of the business community is being heard. And that's never been more important as we continue to work together through these challenging times, and especially with the current status of this pandemic. And I can absolutely say that our team and our volunteers are working tirelessly on all of your behalves. It's my absolute pleasure today to have the opportunity to introduce our two wonderful speakers, great business leaders and all-round really amazing human beings. Both Bob and Joe have a history of taking leading roles and engaging with our business community and being strong supporters and advocates of Brampton Board of Trade. These are two leaders who absolutely understand the important role that businesses play in a thriving community and of the importance of corporate social responsibility, which is demonstrated so well through their leadership at Almag Aluminum. And Almag is an incredible business success story. So first of all, Bob Peacock. Bob is the CEO of Almag, an award-winning service-driven custom aluminum extruder based in Brampton with plants in Ardmore and Florence, Alabama. A family-owned business started by his father, Almag has grown steadily over its 68-year history. Bob graduated from mechanical engineering at the University of Waterloo in 1984 and earned his MBA from York University in 1989. Bob has been active on a number of boards, including Rotary, Brampton Board of Trade, the Aluminium Extruders Council, and Industry Trade Association. He's presently the chair of the William Osler Health System Foundation and is also director of a cottage association. You have got lots going on there, Bob. Bob has a wonderful wife, Deb, who is CEO of the Peacock household, a very important role, and two active children who are both currently living and working in British Columbia. Joe Jackman is the president of Almag Aluminum. He's been with Almag, with the Almag Group for over 16 years and has held the positions of territory manager, VP sales and marketing, and general manager. As president, he's responsible for leading the company's strategic direction and driving its continued growth and success. Almag has built a reputation as an industry leader in extruding high visual, tight tolerance, thin-walled and complex aluminum extrusions. The Almag Group has over 450 employees and serves customers all over North America. Joe has over 10 years experience in the banking industry, as well as significant experience in sales, project management and change management. He has a keen passion for progress and a desire to find solutions. thriving on challenges and raising people to their higher potential. Joe graduated from Lakehead University with a Bachelor of Administration degree and Durham College with a Business Administration diploma, both majoring in accounting with minor in marketing. Joe is a member of the Board of Directors for the Aluminum Extruders Council, as well as a member of both the AEC Academic Engagement Team and the AEC Marketing Team. You are clearly also an extremely busy man, Joe. Joe enjoys spending his time with his wonderful wife, Cara, and raising their 3 beautiful children who keep them busy. Bob and Joe, thank you so much for being here and for being willing to share your stories with us. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Bob Peacock and Joe Jackman. Over to you, Bob.
Great. Well, thank you, Michelle. And as I'll pick up a little bit in some of my comments, aluminium, however you want to say it, we'll be happy to supply you. So I'm just going to give you a little background on Almag, where we came from, how we came to be, and why we're here. So my father, Ed Peacock, started Almag in 1953, so 68 years ago. We started in Etobicoke, which at the time was out in the boonies for people that were all living pretty much in central Toronto. Started with a 1,300 square foot building. And his first product was door grills, which were the curly ornaments that were big in the 1950s and 60s and into the 70s to protect the screen doors that many people had on their houses. And he got into that. He didn't set out to get into the aluminum business or the door grill business, but he got into it because he had been working for another Canadian company, or a company in Canada that was in Fort Erie, so near the US border. And it was a US company, and for whatever reason was manufacturing in Canada. His boss in the US really had no interest in the Canadian market, and my father felt there was an opportunity to make and sell door grills in Canada. But as I say, his boss or the employer wasn't interested. So he approached his boss and said, I think there's a good opportunity here. I won't compete with you, but I'd like to go and start my own business doing this. So they parted friends, and Almag was born. So really, it started out by him identifying an opportunity and saying, I think we can help people with that. And over the first number of years, as he sold door grills, customers were asking for other door hardware like mail slots, thresholds, door sweeps. And again, it came back to, what do customers want and how can we help them? And that really has been a backbone of our business all along. So gradually the business grew, and in 1959 we were buying a lot of extrusion, which are profiles out of aluminum, and fabricating them, but we weren't making our own extrusions. And again, the suppliers that we had were not really tuned in well to what the market needed and weren't supporting us as a company very well. So my father found a used extrusion press, and in 1959 we got in the extrusion business. Gradually grew. By 1973, 74, we were running out of space in Etobicoke and found the Brampton plant that we are in now on Finley Road. At the time, it was a 30,000 foot building on 5 acres, and the Etobicoke plant by then had grown to about 13,000 square feet. So it was 2.5 times the size and much bigger property. So it was a big leap of faith. But it was the best thing that we've ever done. When he started Almag, his ambition was to build good products, develop good people, and earn repeat business. And this is going to sound a little bit basic, but his vision too, and really what he focused heavily on, was to survive for another month or another year. And that sounds obvious, but it's surprising how not obvious it is to many people in many companies. Few companies do the right things to survive for the long term. And while he had an ambition to outsell General Motors, and he said that my ambition is to outsell General Motors, which we haven't done yet. We have had some years where we've made more money than General Motors, but we've never outsold them. His ambition was always big, but his focus was, let's make sure that we can get through this month and this year and be here for our customers down the road. So the Brampton acquisition was a turning point. As I say, it was a large expansion. A lot of money was needed for it. And so we desperately needed to find business and find customers. And what happened was that we migrated to an end of the market that no one else really wanted to do. And that was the very difficult, high finish products. Picture frames were big in aluminum, but right in your face, highly visual, right in front of you. Trim for appliances, again, sort of right in front of you, highly visual. We earned a reputation as the company that would do the difficult stuff. And really over the last 45 years since then, our fundamental vision hasn't changed. We want to be the supplier of choice for our customers, as does everyone. But we also want to be the customer of choice for our suppliers and the employer of choice for our employees. So that's really kind of how Almag has been built. That's the backbone of who we are. I was fortunate that when I joined Almag in 1983, I had graduated from Waterloo, and I was fortunate. I really wanted to be in this business. I had a passion for it. And so while it was a family business, it was something I really wanted to do. And I was fortunate that I learned a lot from my father in the first few years. And then in 1987, at the tender young age of 66, he passed away. So I was still in the grooming stage, not really in anyone's mind ready to take over. But that's what happened. Out of necessity, I became the president of Almag, and I took over our business at that point. So I learned some very valuable lessons from that. That first transition opened my eyes to the need to have a contingency plan. My father was relatively young when he passed away, and he had only been sick for 3 weeks. So, it really was something that, if it had happened a few years earlier, could have crippled the company and put us in a very difficult position. So fortunately, as I say, I was working towards succession, but the handoff in our minds was still 3 to 5 years away. And I think too many entrepreneurs leave it too long to deal with succession. We think we're invincible. We think we're immortal, and we're not. So at the time I was young, I was 28, and I reached out to others to learn as much as I could about running a family business. And I say family business, and one of the things that I picked up early on was that I think we have to make decisions as family business people. Are we going to be a family business, family first, or are we going to be a family business, business first, and family second? And I say that because when I took over and I got involved with a group called CAFE, which is a family enterprise group, I met many people, and I met many people who were in their business because it's what their parents had done. And it's not really where they wanted to be. And they were there because they felt either a feeling of loyalty or an obligation, or it was the way they were going to get looked after. And their businesses, many of them, haven't survived. They're not around anymore. And I think it's for 2 reasons. They weren't passionate about what they were doing, and they saw the family business as the bank account. And there are times in business that you can't use your business as your bank account. You have to put the business first. So I have 2 children, and I put no pressure on them to get involved in the business. I believe you've got to do what you love. We all spend a long time at work, and we've got to love what we do. So I recognized many years ago that while one or both of them may end up coming into our business, the likelihood of them taking over was small. So I did set a 15-year plan. It wasn't cast in stone, but it was a roadmap. It was a plan. I was about 47 or 48 years old at the time, and I set out a 15-year plan to find my successor, let them become familiar with Almag, understand our business, and prove themselves, and then for me to get out. I also have outside interests. As Michelle mentioned in the introduction, I've felt it's important to be involved in the community, to be involved in some other things beyond just my business. So you only live once, and I wanted to make sure that I had the time and the capability to do that. So to do that, I had to get somebody who could man the store, if you will, while I was off doing some of these other things. I'm involved with the Peel campaign, or was involved with the Peel campaign when we built Peel Memorial about 6 or 7 years ago. I'm on the Osler Foundation board, chair it now. Fantastic organization. Obviously, I'm biased, but fantastic organization. And the Board of Trade and Osler have a fantastic partnership. So I want to thank everyone involved with the Board of Trade for the partnership that we have, making healthcare in Brampton better. And it's critical to the quality of life for all of us. So in looking for somebody who could do my job, it took me a little while, and I had a few false starts. But ultimately, Joe, I came to realize, was the one that I wanted to move into that role. Joe is much better than I am at many things. He's much better at getting stuff done. The other thing is, I get a thrill out of seeing things happen. I get a thrill out of working with fairly small groups and getting quick results, making rapid improvements. And as we got bigger, that became harder and harder to do. You could still do some of that, but it was harder to kind of turn on a dime and make things happen very quickly. So frankly, running Almag, while it's still fun, it became less fun than it was in my earlier days when we were a quarter the size that we are now. So what kind of things was I looking for in a new leader for Almag? Number one, they had to be passionate about our company. They had to be passionate about what we do, about our customers, and really sort of, if you will, keeping the vision alive. They had to be energetic and driven to improve. They had to be a team builder in the trenches. And we had 4 core values at the time, and they had to really live those core values. That's passion for progress, respect and fairness, humility, and ownership. And Joe filled those roles very well. So, we all like to have some fun at work, and Almag is no different. And the other thing about Joe is he's got quite the sense of humor and makes us laugh a lot and enjoys playing some jokes. I first met Joe actually as a consultant in about 1999 or 2000. We had called a company in to help us with our sales, to find ways to develop our sales a little bit more. So Joe was a consultant for this company. So my first impressions of Joe was very hardworking and smart. That was many years ago. So those are the only things that kind of stick with me from the very early days with Joe. But when he was decided not to be with the consulting group anymore, because it meant, that job meant being different places 2 or 3 times through the year and not having really a great home base, the consulting company contacted me and said, Joe has decided to leave, and he's, looking at opportunities elsewhere. And of the companies he's worked with, he really enjoyed working with Almag. Would you be open to hiring him? And I said, absolutely, I would. So obviously the first impression was, as I said, hardworking and smart, and I want him on my team. So I'll just share a kind of a memorable story about Joe that gives you a sense for the sense of humor that he has and why you need to have your guard up. He has a way of saying things and doing things that many of us wouldn't or couldn't get away with, and he can get away with them. So I think it was about 10 years ago, we were in Chicago at a trade show, the Neocon trade show. And you know how some exhibitors have candy or giveaways at their booths that you can grab? Well, one of them had a bowl of little chocolate-looking balls wrapped in plastic as a giveaway. And one of our newest employees, one of our newest territory sales managers had gone to the washroom. So when he returned, Joe tossed him one of these candies, looked like candy, tossed him one of these candies and said, here, we picked this up at the last booth. And as many of us would, and I almost did, Rob ripped open the package and tossed the little chocolate in his mouth. Well, about 5 seconds later, he got this puzzled look on his face, and he opened his mouth to ask, what kind of chocolate was this? It wasn't chocolate at all. It was a little ball of dried up dirt with some seeds in it for us to take home and plant. Well, Rob's saliva had started to activate this little ball of dirt, and so he had dirt on his teeth and on his lips. It was not nice, but the rest of us that were in the group almost fell on the floor laughing. Needless to say, Rob beelined it back to the washroom to get rid of this thing in his mouth and to rinse it out. 10 years later, Rob is still with us, still working for Joe, And Joe is still pulling pranks like that. And somehow Joe is staying loved and respected by his victims. And we haven't been sued yet. So with that intro, I'd like to toss it over to Joe. No candies, no chocolates. But Joe, if you can tell us a little bit about what it's like from your perspective.
I forgot that story. I really did think it was a chocolate. No, really, I did. Yeah, I always love hearing you talk until that point, Bob, just about the history of Almag. We are in our 69th year, and it's always great to just reflect back on all the many twists and turns that got us to where we are. So thank you for that. Yeah, as Bob said, I started here in 2000 as a consultant. Prior to that, I spent many years with a bank, and as Michelle said, I have an accounting background. So interestingly, when I wanted to leave the bank to get into something else, and my last couple of years at the bank, I had spent 2 years traveling all over Canada, creating call centers, mortgage centers. We were removing positions from the branches and creating centers where all the phone calls would go into and whatnot. And it was a ton of change management, a ton of learning. We were going into small towns, changing the way they process stuff in branches. And I really got a good taste of change management and what it takes to try to move the ball forward. And when I was done that kind of tour of duty, 12 years at the bank, I met all kinds of people, and I thought, okay, I'm either going to stay in the bank and be a lifer, or I better get out now and try something else. And I had an opportunity to join a consulting company. Fortunately, Bob is very open to outside people and companies coming in to help us get better at stuff. We don't think we know everything, and when we don't know something and someone else does, let's bring them in and get them to help us out. So that's kind of how I got to Almag. And I remember walking in here the first day and meeting the employees and seeing the process and going, wow, this is a really interesting company. They do a lot of cool stuff. There's really, really nice people, and what a great culture. And you can go into any company, which I did as a consultant. I went to many companies. You go in, and with the first few hours, you have a good, certainly within the first couple of days, you have a good taste of the pulse of the company and what the energy is like and what the culture is like. And Almag stuck out to me as a very, very unique culture. And Bob, as the owner of the company, was out of all the owners I met of small companies that we would go in and consult at, was always very easygoing, laid back, very smart and analytical, and was just a pleasure to work with. So it was I was fortunate enough to be able to come in here a few months after I finished my tour of duty here, come back in as a territory sales manager. And Michelle, I was calling it aluminium too, because I didn't even know what aluminum extrusion was at that point. And I always say to people, try saying aluminum extrusion 3 times fast. If you're not used to saying it, it's a bit of a tongue twister. So a huge learning curve coming in as a territory sales manager, selling, I went from banking to consulting to selling aluminum extrusion within a couple of years. And it's been a phenomenal ride. I spent about 6 years here, 2000 to 2006, kind of growing my territory, working with the team and building increased sales. And there wasn't really an opportunity for growth for me. I wanted more. All the kind of positions above me were kind of filled, and I didn't see any changes happening there anytime soon. And I was yearning for something else. And I thought, okay, if I don't try something else now, then I'll never do it, and I'm not ready to settle in yet. So I made a very difficult decision. It was a very, very difficult decision to leave Almag. I think I gave 2 weeks notice, but ended up working for about 6 or 7 weeks. Wanted to transition my territory over to a new salesperson. And I went out and started my own business and got into store fixtures and signage market. And I started doing that. And of course, when you start your own business as an entrepreneur and you're the salesperson, the financial person, the marketing person, the operations person, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I had huge learnings doing that. And 3.5 years later, so, you start a new business, you put your head down, you barrel through, and started making some good progress. Had a few setbacks as well, but made some good progress building up my client base and increasing the sales. and things were I just landed a really, really big order for me at the time. It was a huge order. And I get a phone call from Bob. So 3.5 years later, after I left, saying, "Hey, are you interested in coming back?" So it was again a tough decision. Always loved Almag, always loved the people, loved the business. But man, my business was starting to take off. But I was a one-man show. I had one other person, but pretty much I was doing most of the work. So it was a difficult decision. Bob and I had many conversations. I certainly knew how Almag operated. I knew how the sales team operated. He wanted me to come back and manage the sales team. And we had many conversations. I think I tallied it up. It was about 9 hours of deep conversations around what would happen if I come back and what I would have to do to change my business, my other business, and things that I wanted to do if I came back. And Bob and I came to an agreement, and in 2010, I came back as the VP Sales, and then we set out to kind of make a few changes to kind of amp up our sales process and start increasing our business at a faster pace than we were before, and we were at a pretty good pace historically anyway. So I was fortunate enough again that Bob allowed me to come in and do something a little bit different than how things were done in the past. And he's, we say he's I say he's an operations focused president when he was the president, and I'm a sales focused president. So we have very different personalities. We have different experiences and educations, but we balance each other off very nicely. And it's been a heck of a ride as we continue to grow Almag. Interesting his story about the candy at the trade show. So Bob is I'm more sales, a little bit shoot from the hip. Bob is a little bit more measured and analytical and takes his time. And I like to kind of grow and make lots of money and spend lots of money. He likes to grow, make lots of money, and save lots of money. So we balance each other off quite nicely there. Bob has his own plane, and a small plane, and we've flown many times to various customers throughout. It allows us to get there quicker in many cases. Just a little story about him, since I owe him one for the candy story. He likes to mess around with the fuel mixture. So we're up in the air, we're nice and high, and he likes to not spend a lot of money on fuel. So he always kind of messes around with it and tries to get the right mix. And sometimes as he's doing that, the engine goes out. And so I'm like, what's going to happen? And he wouldn't even tell you it went out. You hear it go out, but he doesn't say anything and just kind of starts it back up again and keeps going. So that's kind of how he's nice and measured and saves a bit of money on fuel, and also just runs things very nicely. One of the other things that I think sticks out to me that I learned when I started at Almag, and the way that Bob has run the company, always we're open to anyone coming in at any time. So often you never want your competitor to come in. We don't really say we have a lot of competitors. We have a lot of other people with extrusion presses, down the street, but we don't have a lot of people that produce the similar type profiles and the complexities that we do. And one quick learning I got from him was, hey, it's okay to have people come in, take them on a tour, as long as they reciprocate. Let's get best practices. Let's see what machinery other people are using. Let's show them how we do it. Maybe we can pick up some best practices. So it was a huge learning curve for me to say, hey, you think you have all this unique proprietary way of doing stuff, when really it's just presses and it's just how we run them. So there's lots of great sharing and learning that we've done over the years. We've had many other extruders through our facility, and then they've all reciprocated. We've been through 20, 30, 40 different extrusion companies throughout the US over the years, and it's been huge learnings, and it's definitely a key part of our success. One of the other things that we do quite a bit of is Bob was part of tech back in the day, and we're now part of McKay Group, McKay CEO Forums. So it's just an outside group of peers. They're not in the extrusion world. They're just other people, senior leaders of companies. We all have similar challenges and issues, whether it's trying to find good people, whether it's trying to increase productivity, or any other sort of issues out there. And again, it's a commitment. It's 8 full days a year that we commit to it. So initially, Bob suggested that I take a look at that back 10 years ago, and I was like, I don't know if I have time to do that. But he had been doing it for years, and it's been a key ingredient to the success. So I got kind of hooked on that, and it's been just amazing. And now we have 3 of our senior management team members that are in their own groups. We have peers that we can bounce stuff off of at any time. We meet 8 times a year to sit down and talk about various issues and challenges. And it's been a huge help in just having someone who ultimately ends up knowing your business, because you have relationships with them for a year or two, and then they can help you out, and you can certainly help them out. We have lots of great things on the go at Almag. We bought a facility in the U.S. Just towards the end of last year. It's very difficult right now to get down there and get it up and running. It was a facility that was closed down about a year before, so it had 2 extrusion presses in it and everything all kind of set up to go, but no people. And we've never produced extrusion in the United States before. And given all the challenges in the world, it was in that you never know what different presidents may or may not do. We thought it was a great opportunity to get some press capability down there. And so we picked up this press, 2 presses, and we are just in the process of getting those 2 presses up and running, and we'll be starting to extrude down in the US, which is very exciting. Our business here in Canada is very busy, and we could use the extra capacity down there as well. Todd, I think I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, and thank you, Bob, as well. Wow, what an interesting story. You've brought up so many, I think, points of note for those that are watching today, that are in family businesses, that are considering succession planning. I'm going to touch on a couple of things that you've said, but you both seem to have such a fun sense of humor. I'm going to start with a fun question from one of our past presidents. Almag, where did the name come from?
I'd like to say my dad just kind of closed his eyes and picked a thing, but here, I'll try and keep it short. The story is this, that when he started, he had in mind working with aluminum and magnesium. And so he applied to have his company called the Aluminum and Magnesium Company of Canada. Talk about a mouthful. And they said no, because there was an Aluminum Company of Canada, which became known as Alcam. So they said no. So he just abbreviated it to Almag, taking the first 2 letters of aluminum and the first 3 letters of magnesium. And so it became Almag Aluminum and Magnesium Limited. We never did work with magnesium, even though that was his thought in the beginning. It's a bit of a volatile substance. And so we never have done anything with magnesium. We've extruded other metals. We extruded silver at one point, which was kind of interesting. It was before my time, but apparently they would bring the raw material in an armored truck. And we used to cut it with an axe, because if you used a saw, the saw chips were too valuable. Right. And we've extruded zinc, but we've never done anything with magnesium. That's where the name came from, aluminum and magnesium.
That's one of the most favorite parts of my job here at the Brampton Board of Trade is seeing how chemistry plays such an important role. I did my undergrad in chemistry, and I thought that was going to be something to do with the name, the magnesium part. Mm-hmm. Let's get back to our main topic, which is succession. And Bob, at 48, at 28, you had mm-hmm. your first succession from your father, and that was a rapid one. May he rest in peace. 3 weeks of illness, and at 48, you outlined a 15-year plan. You set out criteria to find your successor, a passionate, respectful, humility, and a sense of ownership. Joe, before you came on board, you had to exercise your entrepreneurial spirit in your own small business, which went very well. You had 9 hours of deep conversation. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when
I
that
wish
was.
we could have recorded those back then. It was
both of you refer to peer consulting support, peers that you worked together with in making your decisions, peer guidance. You looked closely at each other and the skills that you bring, the temperaments, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my question for those that are out there thinking of doing the same. And Bob, you made a really good point. You said too many businesses leave this decision too late. What was the toughest part? I'll ask you both. What was the toughest part of making the transition, and what would you do differently in retrospect?
Yeah, I would say in terms of making the transition from my father to me, it actually went quite smoothly, even though it was a bit rushed. I'd been working with him for about 4 years. The toughest part at the time was we were in the middle of a significant expansion. We were adding another extrusion press. And so the first thing I did, or one of the first things I did, was sit down with the bank and just said, here's the situation. We've met, but you don't really know me. Here's who I am. Here's what my plan is. And part of my plan, which I don't know that it was that conscious at the time, but probably the best decision I made was I've got a team, or my dad had a team of people, a small team, but a team of people that were doing a good job, and the business was making money. And I didn't want to change anything. I wanted to just let it run for a little while, even though there were things I looked at and said, I think we could do this or that that would make it better. I thought it was important initially to have customers, suppliers, and in this case, the bank as a supplier, get comfortable with, okay, Almag is fine. Yep, Mr. Peacock isn't there anymore, but Almag is okay. So in some ways, the toughest thing was being 28 and having people who were in their late 50s or early 60s reporting to me, and balancing out what I saw as a need to migrate towards doing some things differently, but not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so, Joe mentioned as he came back, he wanted some assurance that there were things that he thought we probably should do differently, and he needed assurance that I would be okay with that I would support it. And so in terms of the transition from Joe to me, I would say that the toughest thing was, I guess the word I'll use is nailing it. As I said, I had a few false starts. I hired a few people into VP type roles before Joe came back in 2010. And I hired them in VP roles with the intent that they do that role, but also in the back of my mind thinking maybe this could be my successor. As I say, it was a 15-year plan, 5 years to find the person, 5 years to let them get to know us and become president, and then 5 years for me to sort of make my last exit. So we're still in that plan. I'm still part of it, but I had a few false starts. And so the hardest thing probably was coming to terms with the fact that this person that I thought might be it, no, they're not it. This one, no, that's not right. And that took 3 or 4 years. And then even though I knew Joe and we worked together for a few years, it took a few years for me to become convinced that yes, he's the one. So whether that's just stubbornness on my part or it's been a family business for a long time. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into building the business, and actually, handing the baton off and letting go of it is not easy. And that's why, too, I think it's important to take time to do it and do it right. So, yeah, I would say those would be kind of the challenges that I've faced on the 2 transitions I've been involved with.
I think I'm happy that I threw the chocolate to at that trade show. I'm happy with you that I threw the chocolate to at the trade show.
You know what, you could have, and I would have thrown it in my mouth, and then I probably would have laughed almost as hard once I got my mouth cleared out.
Or the future of Almag could have been very, very different.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So, isn't it always the case that the people issues are the toughest ones? Evaluating, having expectations, and again, back to your point of taking time, having a plan, communicating a definition of that plan, how long you would prefer to make the decision. And you broke down your 15 into 5 and 5 and 5. 5 for the successor to get to know the company. Again, 5 for them to lead, and 5 for you to exit. That's very, very helpful, I think, for many. Joe, anything on your part with respect to what was toughest for you in taking on the lead role? Anything that you would do different?
Yeah, one of the things I thought was going to be tough. I mean, when I got promoted to president in January of 2018, Bob had been the president for 30 years. So naturally, it's like, okay, he's still around, and now I'm going to go into his, fill his shoes. Fortunately, we kind of ramped up into it. I was a general manager for 2 years before, so some of the roles and stuff had kind of transitioned over to me, but still. The title was changing, and people look at the role president and go, "Oh, you're the president." And one of my concerns was, geez, I'm going to be making more decisions now, but people are used to going to Bob for 30 years on all the decisions, and how do we balance that out? So we sat down and spent some time basically just creating a very simple. It was a spreadsheet, but what's the nice to knows that Bob, it's nice for him to know, and then what's the need to know. So we just put a list down. Okay, if it's this sort of a conversation, Bob needs to know. If it's this, it's like, okay, keep him in the loop, manage up, if you will, but just keep him in the loop as to how things are going. So that pre-conversation we had before the transition was huge, because the parameters were all there. So I know what I need to talk to him about. The other thing, and Bob uses the line, your boss's boss is not your boss. So, if someone's going to go to Bob and say, Bob, I need this, that, whatever, and Bob knows, again, back to our list, and he knows, okay, that's not really his decision to make, it's my decision. So someone can go and vent with him and talk to him, whatever, which we encourage on the, open doors. But the ultimate decision has to come from me. So I thought that would have been one of the big challenges. Fortunately, we talked about it up front. We laid it all out, and quite frankly, I can't even really think of one example where it's been an issue.
Wow, very helpful there. A spreadsheet that clearly defines decision-making rules, what Bob needs to know, what is nice to know. Very, very helpful tip. Thank you, Joe, for that. Joe, succession planning takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of thought, takes new tools. Like your decision-making spreadsheet, takes some peer advice. When you're doing that, you're also expanding. I take a look at the last 4 years. You're expanding your Brampton plant. You're purchasing an Alabama plant. And then there's this thing called pandemic. And Bob, it must have been deja vu all over for you again. The transition from your father's tenure happened, you mentioned, during a time of expansion as well. So, guys, tell us your secret. How did you balance life, business life, and the succession all together? What's your secret?
Bob, I'll let you go first if you want.
Okay. I don't know that I have a secret. I guess, it somewhat to the point Joe just made, because we had sort of laid out a little bit of a plan in terms of what my responsibilities and involvement would be and what Joe's were. It did make it a little easier as these opportunities came up to kind of say, okay, yes, Bob, you can work on this. Joe, you can look after that. And even though each one of the things that came up, and they did come up a little bit too coincidentally in kind of 2018, where we had three major things going on at the same time. We bought an anodizing plant. We expanded and bought the building across the street and expanded there. And there was we were putting another press in. So that was an awful lot at once. But for the most part, none of them, they were significant items, but none of them were earth-shattering. So they were all manageable. We involved other people, both within the company and outside the company, to help us with it. And then with the pandemic, Joe can probably comment better than I can on that. But with the pandemic, somewhat similar. We were fortunate that as a manufacturer, we were encouraged to keep operating to support our customers, many of whom were in the medical field. So our business dropped significantly last spring, but it didn't go to zero. And we have a workforce that that really they're fantastic. They understand the situation we're in. They understand that they may have to sacrifice a little in the short run in order to help Almag in the long run, because that will ultimately help them. So we didn't, we put in a lot of time. We were talking literally 7 days a week, many days, a couple of times a day, planning it out, because everything changed so much even from day to day in the early days. But we had this spirit of cooperation, and I think that's really what got us through, and this kind of this vision or this expectation that we'll be okay. It's going to be tough for a little while, but we'll be okay, and we need to kind of stick to our plan in terms of looking after customers as best we can, and not reacting too strongly one way or another. But let's keep the boat upright and maybe moving more slowly forward, but keep it moving forward.
Optimism can go a long way. Optimism, patience, etc. Joe, anything more to add?
Yeah, patience and perseverance for sure. And those are two things. Certainly the patience part is something that Bob has taught me over the years. Wasn't historically too much of a patient person, but realizing if you take a step back and take your time and work with the team and the people around you, that it will, things will work out. One of probably the biggest challenge I thought we would have in the transition. Again, Bob's a great guy, the most humble guy I've ever met. He's built this amazing company and culture here, but it's like, man, we're switching presidents after 30 years, and Bob and I, we're in sync on almost everything. We're just two different personalities, like anyone would be. And I thought, man, how do I help make sure that the culture stays just as good as it is now, and hopefully get it better somehow, even though I think we have a phenomenal culture here. So we again, in the realm of hiring outside people, we hired a company just as the transition started to come in and do a culture assessment. So culture values assessment. They came in, they specialize in this, and we did like polling with all the employees, went online and filled in, and it was an interesting project. The employees would go in and say, okay, here's what my own personal values are. Here's what I see Almag's values are, and here's what I wish Almag's values were. And so there was kind of three buckets there. And at the end of the day, it measures entropy, and entropy is basically tension in the company or tension within. And we could break it out by departments. We have fairly big departments here, and so we got a result out of that, and they came back and said, "Wow, your entropy is really low," which is great. The lower, the better. The tension is less. And I was like, oh, that's great, but damn, how am I going to make that better? It's already low. They said, we've done this for years, and you guys have some of the lowest of anyone that we've ever started out with. Usually it's higher, and then we get other consulting projects with you to help you get your culture under control. They said, it's actually very, very good. So that was exciting. What we also did, and Bob talked about the four core values that we had, and we still do, but we worked with, we had breakout sessions with a whole bunch of the employees. Almost a third of the employees pulled into different breakout sessions, again, led by this outside company, to talk about the results, what they said about the culture and what they wish the culture was, and just the delta there. And what's the meat behind that? You say this, what does it really mean? So we peeled in, and I remember going back years ago with Bob in my first tour of duty here, talking about, we had ownership was one of our core values, and our thing back then in 2002 or whatever was ownership. Treat the company as if it were your own. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but what does that mean? I said, let's go look in the parking lot. Everyone's got cars. Let's look. This is how this person treats their car. This is how this person treats their car. We need to figure a way to tell people what ownership at Almag looks like. And that's where this was awesome. This whole process that we did, because we honed out our core values, came up with an extra core value. So we have 5. But this is what it looks like, and more importantly, this is what it doesn't look like. So there's examples, just little one-line examples. This is what passion for progress looks like. This is what it doesn't look like. And now we have signs plastered up all around the building, and everyone, ownership is certainly one of our core values still, and everyone is entitled to hold their coworkers to account. And if someone's out of line, whether it's your boss or your boss's boss or your peer, you can hold them to account and say, hey, here's our core values. You're off a little bit. Let's kind of get back on track. So it was a huge undertaking and a huge impact. The potential scary part for me was 2 years later, which was just last year, we had them come back in to do a check-in on the culture, and we were due. The deal was you come in the first one, and then within 2 years you come back again. And of course, we wanted to do a pulse. Unfortunately, that was just after COVID started, so it was last summer. And I'm like, it's impossible for the culture to be better because everyone is just confused right now on what's going on. So we had them come in. They did it well, but the buckets here, it was the same. Your values. But we had what was Almag's culture before COVID, and then how are they doing during COVID? So I'm happy to say before COVID, it was marginally better than it was 2 years ago. And then during COVID, it was a little bit worse. But everyone, everyone was under tension for sure. So overall, we're holding our own, which is great.
I am so glad that we're recording this, because in each response that you gentlemen provide, it's just such a wonderful inventory. What I heard in your responses there was, we're able to balance things because we're not afraid to ask for help. And that might be help from an outside consultant. That might be asking our employees for help. You're transparent. And genuine, authentic in your asks for help. Your patience combined with that, it just seems that it exudes confidence in you both, and that confidence just perpetuates the positive messaging that you want to your customers, to your suppliers, to your employees. So thank you for the detailed response there. We're coming to our last couple of questions. Joe, talk to us about, in all of this, you talk to us about overcoming adversity. You, in addition to COVID, just before COVID, had a car accident, and it had some significant impact on your mobility and your pain level. What tips would you have for business for overcoming adversity, be it health, life, aside from work, and how do you again manage it all?
Yeah, it's a good question. Surround yourself with really good people and be a team so everyone can just step in. Bob mentioned the kind of 3 big things we had on the go there over 2017, 2018. So I became president in January of 2018, and I had the car accident in March, and I went down like a rock in April. I had a herniated disc. So we had just kind of commissioned our press, and we had just got the building. We just bought this anodizer in Markham, and boom, I went down. And I typically haven't had any health issues in the past. And being a leader of a company, you certainly hear employees that have challenges, and I certainly have a new appreciation for back injuries. But I was down and out for months. I was at home for 3 or 4 months, and this was kind of before Zoom. So well, not that I would have wanted to have been on Zoom, to be quite honest. In the state I was in. However, that was at the same time Trump was rocking and rolling in the States, and he came out with, in June, so a month after I went down, he came out with the Section 232 tariffs, where he put tariffs on aluminum. and our supply went haywire, and everyone, no Russian aluminum could come in. Not that we bought Russian aluminum back then, but all the lots of other extruders, certainly in the U.S., did buy that, and then they couldn't get any of that, so they started draining supply from all over the place. So if there was a little bit of a silver lining, I'd say it was that, because I could work the phones, and I am a kind of a sales guy by trade. So I worked the phones and spent a ton of time trying to find new suppliers of aluminum, which was very helpful. I certainly quickly learned more of the market. We're not little old Almag in Brampton here. We went all over the world trying to find billets so that we could keep running and keeping our presses going. So, but yeah, the only suggestions I would have, as I say, is have some good people in place that can help fill in, which is what any good company should have. And that was what pulled us through. Was the team really stepped up.
Wow, that's great, and make lemonade if you're handed lemons. You moved to
a fantastic wife at home that will look after you through thick and thin. Because man, I wouldn't have wanted to look after me back then. So that was huge.
Another really, really important point, and I saw Bob smile there at the same time. There's concurrence there. Here's our last question. Comes from our audience. The biggest threat to Almag. You mentioned you got through the tariffs. What, and it might be different, I'll ask you both, what keeps you up at night right now?
Yeah, for me, there's not a lot that keeps me up at night. I would say it's if there's anything, it's the volatility. One of the things that we really work hard to do is react quickly to customers' needs. So we don't have a really big backlog of work. We try and take an order today and be in a position to be able to deliver that order within a couple of weeks. And so what can happen is you can have periods, sometimes very short, but periods where, whatever reason, lots of orders come in and you get swamped. And then you can have periods where not much comes in for 3 or 4 days, and you start looking at each other saying, what are we going to do with the 350 people we've got working for us? And I would say, again, partly through COVID, but the last 18 months, there's probably been as much or more volatility in the demand than I've ever seen. Where we were very busy, and then it dried right up, and then we got very busy again, and then we have a couple of weeks or so where it slows down, and we kind of think, is this because of a second wave or a third? What's going on? So it's that volatility and dealing with that. But as I say, does that keep me up at night? No, it maybe is what wakes me up briefly, and then I say, well, can't do anything about it. I'll go back to sleep. So
well, that's the way to look at it, Bob. That optimism keeps through. It's not what keeps you up at night; it's what wakes you up in the morning, right, Joe?
Right.
Oh, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bob. There's not a lot, quite honestly, that keeps me up. Obviously, COVID keeps me up a little bit right now. We do run 24/7. We have people in the building working all day and all night long, 7 days a week. So keeping COVID out of the building and away from our families is paramount, and we're all dealing with that challenge right now. And keeping the morale of the team up, because now that we're into this third wave, it's just draining on everyone, and just trying to keep everyone's head above water on it. That's probably the biggest stressor right now. Aluminum is a bit of a challenge right now. It feels like there's going to be a bit of a tightening of the market in the next few months. We're okay right now, but it's kind of like vaccines. It's like, oh, we're really good, and then all of a sudden we ran out. We have to shut down for 2 days or whatever. But so Todd, any work, and we appreciate all the work you're doing to push the government to get vaccines rolled out. And I know the city of Brampton is tasked with rolling out to manufacturers. We are open and we are ready for that vaccine as soon as they're ready to deliver.
Well, thank you very much for that, Joe. And yes, COVID is on everyone's minds, and again, to the positive, doing whatever we can to accelerate vaccinations for our essential workers, our factory workers, our logistics and food processing people, and we will continue thank you both for your honesty today, for your articulate responses, for keeping Almag moving forward and expanding and growing. We're so proud of both of you, of the company, of your people. It's so inspiring, Bob, to see a vision executed so well over decades. So congratulations to you both, and thank you to you both for your responses here today. I know William Osler Foundation appreciates your community contributions, your many community contributions here at the Brampton Board of Trade. You are the wind beneath our wings. Yes, Joe, we are actively advocating for more supply of vaccines, actively looking for solutions and helping to create solutions so that, you know, it's kind of like a 4-lane highway. We've got our vaccination clinics, publicly run ones. We've got our pharmacy solution. We've been working hard to get approval on employer on-site vaccinations, and we're going to continue to work hard on pop-up clinics as well. It's a 4-lane highway. We got to get as many people, as many cars across the finish line, so we reach that herd immunity. And thank you for being an inspiration, for always willing to help. And I think that today was just a session that will be watched again and again by those that are looking to succeed. So many practical tips shared so generously by you both. Thank you for that. I also want to thank Meridian, Rogers, Deloitte, Sheridan, CN, and Goodison Insurance for your sponsorship today. A quick note to our listeners and viewers here today. We check BramptonBOT.com for upcoming networks. We have a Prosperity Network meeting, a Talent Network meeting coming up very soon. And of course, we're going to be celebrating 86 companies that have been nominated for our Business Excellence Awards. That's the evening of May 6th. I know that Almag has been nominated. Bob is a past Business Person of the Year. It's always an inspirational evening. I hope you can make it. Bob, Joe, thank you so much for your response. Thank you, everybody. Feel free to stay and move over to the left side of your screen to the networking session. Lots of opportunities to engage. We'll keep this line open until 1:30. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Todd.